The girl entered the room and met a few strangers. Immediately, she used her superpower to attack. Her tentacles easily took down 2 agents who were no match for her and could not resist. When a woman suddenly rushed at her, causing her to fall to the floor, she calmly wrapped her tentacles around the woman's arm. Realizing she couldn't win, the woman ran down the hallway and couldn't find a way out, so she jumped out the window. Outside, an ally was waiting to assist her, but her newly grown arms were too short and she fell hard onto the street. What exactly is going on, and why has this girl turned from an ordinary person into a monster? This woman is Victoria Newman, and she is running for Vice President of the United States. This is unprecedented because Victoria is a mutant with superpowers. Kimiko quietly pushed a cart through the crowd, bringing cakes to 2 colleagues who were plotting to assassinate Victoria. Huey replaces the eye drops with concentrated acid. Then they reunite with Billy Butcher, who is drinking to drown his sorrows. Billy has a brain tumor that causes him to hallucinate and talk to himself. The 3 of them went to the building's emergency exit. With just a word from Butcher, the 2 guards led them inside. Butcher wanted to take the elevator, but Kimiko stopped him because it was his job to guard the surroundings. In the hall, Homelander was standing thoughtfully, holding his silver hair. He seemed to be having a mini meltdown when he noticed this sign of aging. Taking a deep breath to calm down, Homelander called out to his son. Ryan hesitates because the place is crowded, but Homelander reassures him that everyone is just entertainment. This boosted Ryan's confidence. Victoria was quite surprised to see Homelander. She tactfully chased the children away and asked him what he was doing there. Even though Homelander has supported the new government for the past 16 years, Victoria does not want him there because he is awaiting trial for murder. Homelander was not worried at all because he knew the trial was just a formality. Even though they hate each other, they still act friendly. Homelander holds Victoria's hand and praises her in front of the crowd. Butcher was standing guard at the door when he saw Ryan. He turned off the communication device and followed the boy. Even though Ryan was angry, Butcher tried to convince him to leave, explaining that Homelander was too dangerous, willing to kill someone in front of everyone. Ryan's faith wavers when he learns the man his father killed was not a criminal. At that moment, Homelander walked in. They exchanged a few taunts before Homelander took his son's hand and left. Unable to act, Butcher could only sigh in frustration. On the other side, Kimiko's team successfully broke into Newman's room. However, before they could finish making arrangements, Zoe walked in. With just one glance, the girl realized something was wrong. Injected by her mother with Compound Vi, Zoe is also a superhero. She attacks security personnel with tentacles protruding from her mouth. The group looked at each other bewildered. As Zoe prepares to attack again, Kimiko rushes her, causing her to fall. Zoe then wraps her tentacles tightly around Kimiko's arm, forcing Kimiko to sacrifice her arm to escape. A tiny new arm grew from the wound. Kimiko ran down the hallway and jumped out the window. Starlight is waiting outside, using her flying powers to save her. However, the newly grown arm was too short, causing Kimiko to fall straight onto the road, hitting the ground hard. Thanks to her ability to regenerate, she survived. The power flashes then turns off. Sensing trouble, Newman quickly took action and easily found Huey. As a family member, he scolded Newman for turning her daughter into a monster. However, she affirmed that she did this to ensure Zoe's safety. While Newman was busy explaining, Huey opened the bottle of acid and suddenly threw it at her. But Newman's body was unharmed. Only her shirt had a hole in it. Huey couldn't believe what was happening. All reports about Newman's abilities were inaccurate. Butcher appeared with a gun in his hand, pointed it at Newman's head and pulled the trigger, startling Huey. But Newman remained unharmed. The acid doesn't affect her and the bullets are even less effective. With a calm demeanor, Newman said goodbye to them and went to change clothes for the press conference. Their failed plan makes Grace extremely angry, especially when Butcher is unable to bring Ryan back. Chairman Robert was also very unhappy to know that if Newman became vice chairman, he would leave in the next term. He called on Marvin to use all resources to eliminate Newman at any cost. In the hallway, Butcher met an old acquaintance after 12 years. However, this is not a coincidence. Joe Kessler wants Butcher to work with him to eliminate Homelander. This is a good opportunity because the Seven is still unstable after many fluctuations. Homelander is going through a midlife crisis, having nightmares every time he sleeps and sometimes even talking to himself. The Deep was publicly criticized by his ex-wife for having an affair with an octopus. To stabilize the situation, Ashley proposed new members to the group and a list of candidates was discussed. But their discussion is for show only, as Homelander's opinion is final. Whenever he praised someone, others would eagerly agree, even if they had previously criticized that person. Homelander gets tired of this flattery and asks the Deep to perform oral sex on the A-Train, an excessive request, but no one dares to object. Frustrated, Homelander stood up from his chair, told the idiots to stop and walked out, tears in his eyes. On the other side, things were equally chaotic. Annie practiced hard, but her abilities did not improve much. After 6 months of planning to assassinate Newman, the attempt failed. The team took out their anger on Butcher, wanting to kick him out, but Hughie protected him. Feeling desperate, Butcher made an appointment with Newman, asking her to help him get Ryan away from Homelander. Newman also finds herself in a difficult position when she understands that Homelander has sent the vice president to tie her down for the next 4 years. However, to cooperate, Newman needs Butcher to show sincerity. She asked him to prevent the press from reporting on her records at the Red River Orphanage. The next day, Hughie's father was hospitalized. Upon receiving the news, he rushed to the hospital. Everything is chaotic, especially Kimiko's relationship with Frenchie is vague and confusing. In addition, Frenchie also has some romantic feelings for Colin, making Kimiko very uncomfortable. Returning to Homelander, he just pulled out another gray hair and put it in a glass jar. Closing the trunk containing his memorabilia, he reviewed the list of potential members, stopping at Sister Sage with a small smile. She is known as the smartest person in the world. Homelander came to the house and knocked on the door, startling Sage, who was pooping. She quickly flushed the toilet to open the door to welcome guests. Sage was quite surprised to see Homelander. Without greeting her, he went straight to the point, asking her to prove she was the smartest person in the world. Seeing the serious attitude of the man standing at the pinnacle of power, Sage reluctantly followed. Just by looking at him, she could guess Homelander's condition. He found someone he could confide in, warned Sage not to reveal anything, and sat down to pour out his feelings. Sage listened and provided exactly the comfort he needed, which Homelander greatly appreciated. He then asked her to join the group of 7 heroes. Sage initially refuses, but Homelander appears sincere, promising to listen to her and help her achieve her global dreams. Finally, Sage agreed. Late at night, Hughie returned to headquarters. While packing his things, he informed Butcher that his father had had a stroke. Hughie deeply regrets not answering his father's call sooner. Butcher didn't know how to help, so he patted his friend's shoulder to comfort him. The next morning, Marvin used CIA resources to track down his ex-wife's boyfriend. Frenchie was complaining about the use of CIA resources for personal matters when he received a text from Colin. Kimiko, who saw the message, recalled seeing them together in the bathroom. Frenchie promises to explain later, saying it's complicated. Kimiko expressed her feelings, saying that if Colin made him happy, then she would support him. Their silent conversation is interrupted by Marvin, who spots their target and several others entering a building. They are led inside by Sage to meet Homelander. After a few compliments, Homelander told Deep to take out 3 baseball bats and ordered his subordinates to beat the people to death. Threatened by their leader, Black Noir acted first and Deep quickly followed. One of the captives, frustrated, tried to run away, but A-Train blocked the exit and would have attacked him if Noir hadn't killed the poor man. Sage coldly told the group to wait for orders. Homelander then flew to the courthouse, with Marvin quickly following. As soon as the judge declared Homelander innocent, his supporters cheered. Sage mixed with anti-fans, throwing coffee cups to incite a fight. Through the news, Hughie learned of the incident and urged Annie to go to the scene. Marvin's team arrives to restore order. Seeing Colin being attacked, Frenchie rushed to save him, and while emotional, kissed him passionately. Returning to headquarters, A-Train received orders and sped away with a body. Homelander clasped his hands behind his back and watched the crowd fight. Annie arrived, calling for calm, but no one listened. While she was busy rescuing her friend Kiara, A-Train brought 3 bodies to the scene. This is all part of Sage's plan to direct public outrage towards Starlight. These events caused Deep to hate himself, seeking solace from the octopus behind his closet, who suggests they escape to the ocean together. Even though he couldn't comply, Deep felt somewhat comforted. Hughie remains at the hospital taking care of his father, listening to a recording of him through tears. Suddenly, a woman's voice rang out from outside. Huey was shocked to see his mother. At headquarters, Butcher plans to delete information about Newman from the computer. Just as he was about to press the button, an image of Becca appeared, advising him not to take advantage of Huey. Instead of sending data, Butcher sent a picture of black bird feathers. Back at the hospital, Huey confronts his mother when he learns she works for Vought. He bluntly stated that he was fighting against Vought and shouted, "What are you doing here?" Huey still hasn't forgiven her for abandoning his family when he was just 6 years old. However, he cannot send her away because his father has authorized her to make medical decisions. Huey appeared suspicious when he revealed she had been in contact with his father for the past 2 years. Angry, he packed his things and left the hospital. Meanwhile, Frenchie officially starts dating Colin, making Kimiko's mood worse. Before that, she was mute due to psychological trauma and often went to see Dr. Gloria for therapy. When the doctor asked about her parents, Kimiko became agitated, broke her chair, and the examination ended badly. She returned to headquarters in an upset mood. At this time, everyone was present. Butcher announced that he had a brain tumor, shocking the whole group. He then lashed out at Annie unreasonably. Seeing this, Marvin angrily called Butcher out and bluntly kicked him out of the group. Huey can't save Butcher this time because Marvin tells him to leave too if he doesn't agree. Meanwhile, Homelander is in a meeting to discuss introducing his son to the public. Every suggestion he made received unanimous praise from his subordinates, except for Sage, who openly criticized him. Homelander felt both anger and amusement, a mixture of emotions he had never experienced before. Ashley was shocked because usually no one dares to argue with Homelander. Sage asserted his position and left the meeting room. Ashley chased after her, warning her of her impudence, but Sage, fearless, ignored her and made a few sarcastic remarks. Suddenly, Deep interrupted, expressing his desire to participate in filming Ryan rescuing civilians. However, Ashley refused, citing problems with his current relationship. Before leaving, she insults everyone, calling them stupid while trying to act smart. Sage is surprised as Deep stands still, while Ashley insults him and encourages him to show his superiority. At Starlight headquarters, the members are analyzing the fight. Marvin quickly realized that the 3 dead people had been brought to the scene by A-Train. The victims' injuries showed no signs of being related to psychic powers, suggesting that this plan was Sage's idea. She even offered to stage the scene where Ryan rescues the people. The director reviewed the first take, criticized each one, and told Ryan to hit him hard for a realistic effect. Ryan didn't want to continue, feeling it was a lie, but Homelander sweet-talked him, saying it was just to prepare for real situations. Deep is worried, asking Homelander if anyone died today. Homelander didn't answer but harshly told him to be quiet. Frustrated but unable to retaliate, Deep vented his anger on Ashley and threatened her. Too scared, Ashley apologized profusely and hurriedly left. Homelander, observing his son's actions, overhears assistants discussing the $9 million spent on removing Seven's wrinkles. Shocked, he looked in the mirror, clearly sad. Marvin, after tracking down Sage's address, led the group to find her, but only found Butcher waiting. Reluctantly, they let him join the group. Kimiko is distracted by a poster on the street and signs the group. Marvin, spotting Sage, focuses on their target. Kimiko, nervous, grabbed a few beers from the supermarket, gulping them down without burping. Feeling calmer, she went to the lecture room, where influential people were spreading anti-Starlight propaganda. When a henchman walks out, Marvin instructs Frenchie and Kimiko to follow without interfering. Butcher tries to get involved, but Marvin stops him. Frenchie received a text from Colin, but Kimiko grabbed the phone, replying with an eggplant emoji suggesting anal sex. Drunk and thinking she was getting in the way of Frenchie's relationship with Colin, Kimiko took action. Frenchie asked her if she drank much. She held up 2 fingers, then confessed that she actually drank 8 cans. Frenchie, frustrated, redirects her to their mission. They discover that the henchman has taken off his clothes and is cloning himself to perform a bizarre act. They signaled that everything was okay and quickly left. Meanwhile, at Unity Park, Hughie and Annie are watching A-Train, who is telling stories to his grandchildren. Nathan, in a wheelchair, confronts him, exposing his fake heroic actions. A-Train stood still, embarrassed, and did not dare to refute. Marvin and Butcher overhear Sage planning to meet the firecrackers, Butcher questions the reason for being sneaky, suggesting that the sage should just be beaten to get information. Marvin heard that and immediately pulled Butcher out and chased him back. Marvin immediately accuses Marvin of having poor leadership abilities, which will soon endanger the entire group. Marvin remained calm until Butcher mentioned his wife, causing Marvin to punch him repeatedly. Inside, Kimiko continued to drink, angry at the false propaganda. She scribbled on a flyer, and when a bystander tried to intervene, she threw him aside. Frenchie arrives just in time to calm her down and take her away. A-Train, feeling guilty after Nathan's confrontation, gave Huey a USB containing footage of the two suspects during the altercation, proving they were 20 blocks away at the time. He did this partly out of guilt and partly to thank Annie for not attacking him in front of the children at the park. After rehearsing backstage, Homelander and Ryan take to the streets to perform for the public. According to the script, Ryan rushed to suppress a criminal, but when Homelander suddenly spoke up, Ryan stiffened. That was not in the plan. Homelander urged his son to finish the act, so Ryan reluctantly pushed his co-star into the wall. Ryan is shocked at what he has done and begins to understand his father's true nature. Marvin's group arrived at the location where Sage was expected to encounter artillery fire. They set up hidden cameras, but the place was empty. It turned out that Sage had set a trap. Flare cannons and clones held the team at gunpoint, while Sage left the scene as planned. Marvin gave the signal to fight, and a chaotic battle ensued. Marvin and Frenchie ran out and mixed into a rich ladies' party, trying not to attract attention. However, a fight breaks out when Kimiko pushes a firecracker through the wall, causing everyone to run away. Although the clones are not strong, they are many and constantly multiplying. Kimiko was shot in the forehead while distracted, and Frenchie was also overwhelmed by the clones. Firecrackers begin streaming, claiming that she is being attacked by CIA agents. Butcher then appears and knocks her unconscious, showing no mercy as he begins slaughtering the clones. Overwhelmed by their numbers, he was quickly surrounded. Butcher screams for Marvin to get everyone to leave, but the group refuses to abandon him and returns to help. Butcher can move his arms, grasp an iron bar, and stab a clone from the jaw to the skull. With the death of the original, all copies fall. Firecracker woke up and fled the scene. The scene switches to Ryan, who is extremely distressed. Homelander brought him a box of ice cream and tried to comfort him, but Ryan continued to cry, blaming himself for the murder. Homelander tells him that accidents happen and people are just like toys, disposable and unimportant. He emphasized that Ryan was destined for greatness and would have to accept that. At the trial of the two suspects in the brawl, with evidence provided by A-Train, they were acquitted. The supporters outside cheered loudly. Annie displays her superpowers in public, strengthening her personal brand. Meanwhile, Frenchie locked himself in his room using stimulants, ignoring Colin's calls. While talking with Cherie, a shocking secret was revealed. Frenchie killed Colin's entire family when he was in the gang. Frenchie is terrified at the thought of Colin knowing the truth. At headquarters, Kimiko reads an article about a terrorist detention facility in NYC, bringing back painful memories. She tore up her therapist's business card, packed her laptop, and left with a determined look on her face. Meeting Butcher at the door, she ignored him, while Marvin stood up to thank him. Butcher reminds Marvin that to be a leader, one must be a real bastard and give up compassion for enemies. However, he admits his mistake. Admitting his rash actions forced Marvin to clean up his mess. Butcher begs for another chance to rejoin the team, but Marvin refuses, saying it's too late. The next day, the ceremony to introduce the new members of Seven was held. Homelander introduced Firecracker and Sister Sage to the public, but they were just a prelude to highlighting his son, Ryan, who would take the final spot. Kicked off the team, Butcher teams up with Joe to drug Ryan and take him away. Before continuing, Butcher reminds Joe that the goal is to show Ryan the right path, not train him to become an assassin against his father. Ryan stood in front of the crowd, confused as Homelander approached, and demanded that his son smile immediately. Reluctantly, Ryan complied amid constant cheers from their supporters. Firecracker, eager to make an impression as the newest member, enthusiastically spreads lies intended to smear Starlight's team. An old man, incited by these lies, appeared at Starlight's headquarters, even carrying a gun to rescue the children believed to be imprisoned. When Frenchie went to talk to Colin, he witnessed the scene and quickly disarmed the man. The old man responded with a punch, causing Frenchie to fight back, knocking him unconscious. Although Frenchie was only slightly injured, Colin appeared extremely worried and carefully bandaged his wound. After everything was settled, Colin put his hand on Frenchie's thigh and offered to feed him soup. Frenchie quickly turned away, but when he was pulled back, he instinctively grabbed Colin's collar. Colin said in a gentle voice, "Are you going to hit me? Then do it." Overcome with emotion, Frenchie pushed Colin down and spanked him. Meanwhile, at the government office, Robert is angry at the growing support for Vought. He no longer hides his views, asserting even in the presence of Victoria Newman that superheroes are merely for entertainment and should be put back in their rightful place. Although Newman was very angry, he still tried to smile. After discovering the location of the Illumination Organization's prison, Kimiko returns to inform Frenchie, expressing her desire to confront her past by killing them all. Frenchie urgently tries to dissuade her from this crazy idea, but Kimiko insists that they have harmed children and asks Frenchie to come with her without further argument. He reluctantly agreed to sit down, consider the location, and set a date. As they left, Marvin called out to them to ask for an explanation, but they just raised their middle finger and smiled amicably, offering no further details. Ryan, while playing a game, received a challenge which he accepted, only to find out it was from Butcher. As he was about to exit the game, Butcher asked for 20 seconds to talk, inviting Ryan to meet him to chat. Frustrated, Ryan unleashes a series of attacks, brutally impaling Butcher's character and lifting it into the air. Outside headquarters, Homelander is seething after hearing Annie's comeback speech. Firecracker approached him suggestively, offering her loyal service and willingness to meet any of his needs. Homelander understood her intentions, but was not interested at this time, indifferently nodded before walking away. Nearby, Fake Noir complains to Ashley about being ignored, but she is too busy to address his concerns. Homelander calls the group into the conference room, sending Ashley away because Sage has replaced her. Ashley, confused if she was fired, was reassured by Sage that she would continue as the team mascot. Extremely frustrated, Ashley awkwardly packed her things and left. During the meeting, Sage mentioned the security footage someone gave Annie, and all eyes turned to Deep because this was his department. Not letting Deep defend himself, Sage immediately took away his duties and moved on to another matter. Frustrated, Deep returned home and collapsed on the bed. His octopus girlfriend calls him over, complaining about the tank not being cleaned and their lack of intimacy. She wanted to get close to Deep's bed, but he refused because he thought it was too dangerous. Too tired, Deep ignored her next questions. Back with Butcher, he is diligently baking a cake to welcome Ryan Wes, secretly mixing a sedative into the cake batter. Just as he finished making the cake, he heard a noise outside. Pulling back the curtain, he saw Ryan already there. Inviting the boy inside, Butcher offered him a piece of cake, emphasizing that he used Ryan's mother's recipe. Even though he was happy, Ryan still refused the cake and said he wasn't hungry. Nearby, A-Train confronts Marvin, clearly angry about Marvin hacking his phone. Ignoring the threats, Marvin gets straight to the point, reinforcing A-Train's exhaustion from being stuck in Vought, evident in the dark circles under his eyes. Marvin offers to recruit A-Train to his team, but A-Train cannot make a decision right away. Meanwhile, Kimiko and Frenchie have infiltrated the Illumination Organization's prison. Noticing Frenchie's dazed state, Kimiko realizes he is high. Even so, she still had to act. Kimiko rushes out, slitting a guard's throat, blood pouring out as Frenchie hallucinates it as toy ducks. His hallucinations worsen, and he is drawn to Colin's voice, leaving Kimiko to fend for herself. Frenchie saw Colin sitting next to the bodies of 3 family members, his face filled with pain as he repeatedly apologized. Images of his past victims haunted him, his head aching as he sank deeper into his delusions. Outside, Kimiko is still fighting fiercely. A girl attacks her, causing Kimiko to panic and only defend herself with her bare hands. Frenchie ran over with a gun and screamed. Kimiko signaled him not to shoot, allowing the girl to escape. At Butcher's house, he and Ryan are having fun playing marbles. Butcher's refusal to go easy on Ryan makes him feel at ease, in stark contrast to the constant deception and flattery at Tower. Ryan opens up to Butcher about accidentally killing someone, admitting he hates himself and agrees that Butcher's earlier harsh words were correct. Butcher gently explains that he doesn't hate Ryan, but has a bad habit of pushing people he cares away from. He admitted that he was afraid of dying and leaving nothing behind, especially not being able to help Ryan. Butcher throws away the drugged cakes, telling Ryan that they have gone bad because of too much sugar. Realizing Ryan's ability to think for himself, Butcher wants to convince him to come voluntarily. At the tower, Sage is interrogating a woman connected to Starlight's team. Terrified, she refuses to answer until Homelander swears on his son's life not to harm her. The moment she confessed, Homelander shot a laser beam through her skull. Sage, dissatisfied with the lack of valuable information, remained unfazed, while Ashley, almost drenched with fear, hastily destroyed his prepared resignation letter. Annie confronts Firecracker in her room, asking why he targeted her. Firecracker reveals they competed in Miss America together, but Annie doesn't recognize her because she's changed so much. Firecracker had to endure hardships, practice singing to win, and change his life. With her efforts, she made it to the finals only for Annie to spread rumors that she slept with the judges, publicly embarrassing the 13-year-old Firecracker. Annie apologizes, admitting she was immature and that her mother taught her to be cruel. Despite Annie's claims that she has changed, Firecracker is still determined to expose the once deviant girl to the public. Elsewhere, Marvin and Huey are trying to wiretap Newman. As they were finishing making arrangements, Newman appeared, causing Marvin to urge Huey to quickly finish and leave. However, Huey still stayed to eavesdrop. Sage proposed to Newman a bill in which each state would be ruled by a hero with more power than a judge, and asked Newman to publicly reveal his superhero identity. Newman immediately refused. When Homelander joins the conversation and senses something is wrong, he fires a laser beam through the ceiling to search for intruders. Luckily, Huey escaped in time. Marvin uses a stage light to blind Homelander, who turns away and accidentally slices the singer in half on stage. Chaos broke out as the crowd fled in panic. Huey tried to push the door open but couldn't budge. Suddenly, he finds himself somewhere else. A-Train took him there. When Huey asked why A-Train helped him, A-Train did not answer and sped away. After returning, Frenchie still showed signs of drug use. He took a sip of wine and recounted his turbulent childhood. His father brought a flower girl home, leaving Frenchie in the bathtub until he finished. Frenchie's fingers wrinkled under the water, but he didn't dare go out. Kimiko immediately senses Frenchie is in trouble and waits until Annie leaves to question him. However, Frenchie gets angry and says they can't solve all of each other's problems. Huey ended up in hospital after a bad day and was too exhausted to argue, so he asked his mother why she left him. She explained that she suffered from postpartum depression and a painful non-healing incision that made every day feel like torture. Despite this, she managed to keep a cheerful attitude for 6 years. One night, she attempted to take sleeping pills to end her life, but an allergic reaction caused her to vomit. The next morning, after dropping Huey off at school, she decides to run away. She doesn't tell Huey this to get forgiveness, but to make it easier to apologize. Meanwhile, Joe is scolding Butcher for not giving Ryan the anesthetic. Butcher thinks it's unnecessary and believes he can eventually convince Ryan. Joe angrily asks if they have time for that, insisting that the world is in danger. If Ryan becomes like his father, humanity will perish. They must train him or find a way to kill him. Deep goes to Sage to get his job back, but their meeting turns into a passionate and heated one. Homelander, in the midst of a midlife crisis, anxiously awaits his son's return. The moment Ryan appeared, Homelander knew the boy had met Butcher. Angry, he scolded Ryan, asking why he was not satisfied with his home and father who gave him everything he ever dreamed of. Terrified, Ryan stammers about Butcher, causing Homelander to fly into a rage. He took the statue and broke the mirror on the wall, losing control in frustration. Suddenly, he heard a voice calling, "John, come here." Homelander approaches the mirror, where 3 alter egos are waiting to criticize him. They urge John to overcome himself, abandon his humanity, and end his madness once and for all. They advise John to return home, to his old laboratory. Just then, Homelander appeared to the researchers' shock. When the old man called him John, he corrected him, Homelander. He placed a cake on the table and asked someone to take the plate, his smile sending chills down their spines. Back with Butcher, a complication from his illness strikes. While taking a shower, he felt something crawling on his back and fell down. The image of his late wife Becca appeared, encouraging him. Butcher clung to the bathtub, trying to get up. At the hospital, Huey's mother decided to remove the feeding tube so her husband could rest in peace. Even though he knew it was a humanitarian act for his father, Huey couldn't accept it and stormed out after failing to convince her. Annie personally meets with the president, offering to help pass new laws to control metahumans. She plans to gather her supporters to protest nationwide, in exchange for Robert using all his resources to destroy Vought once and for all. Meanwhile, Frenchie had a sword fight with Colin. During their conversation, Colin shared about a family tragedy, not knowing that Frenchie was responsible. Colin said the sound of gunfire woke him up. While hiding under the bed, he saw the assassin passing by and noticed a scar on his ankle that resembled a bullet wound. Frenchie was startled, pulled the blanket over his scarred ankle, and apologized, his heart aching. Meanwhile, at the tower, Sage is launching a campaign to take down Starlight. As usual, she used her absolute power, asking everyone to work quickly. Deep, feeling encouraged by their recent encounter, approached her suggestively, asking if she would be willing to take another round at lunchtime. Sage, with a cold and stern voice, tells him that she is increasingly disgusted with him, leaving Deep speechless and embarrassed. Sage gave some documents to Firecracker, who after reading them was excited and eagerly prepared for a press conference to promote the campaign. To counter Sage's scheme, Marvin called Butcher back to the team. Annie immediately protested when she saw the drunk, but Marvin, as the team leader, convinced her that this battle was important and his decision was final. After solving the problem, Butcher asks Annie why Firecracker targeted her. Annie vehemently denied knowing anything. Butcher did not argue further and requested a budget of $50,000 to expose and sabotage Firecracker. Back at the lab, the staff shared a cake brought by John. Homelander suddenly calls Frank over to play a game of paperball throwing. While playing, Homelander recounts his painful past of being experimented on, mentioning that Frank turned up the oven temperature to see if it would burn his skin. Homelander said that although his skin was not burned, it was very painful, and the heat caused his tears to evaporate. Frank explains that he was only following orders, but Homelander insists that he still has nightmares about it, while Frank seems to have forgotten. As a final move, Homelander asks Frank to step into the oven, threatening that if he doesn't, Frank's family will take his place. Everyone was too scared to intervene. Frank apologizes, but Homelander is unmoved. The oven door closes and the temperature rises, burning Frank until he turns to ash. After leaving the hospital, Huey asked Mikiko to take him to the rendezvous point where he planned to meet A-Train. Huey wanted A-Train to get him a vial of Compound V that day. A-Train immediately refuses, saying it's too dangerous because Sage is watching him closely and Compound V is in Homelander's room. Desperate, Huey confesses and explains that only Compound V can save his dying father. They had no idea that their conversations were being monitored. As soon as A-Train left, gunfire erupted, injuring Huey in the ankle. Mikiko must help him escape. While tending to her wound, Mikiko texted Huey to explain the situation. The attackers were from the Illumination organization, seeking revenge for her killing several of their members. Huey, confused, asked what to do next. Mikiko responded with one word: fight. Despite Huey's protests that he can't do it, Mikiko prepares some makeshift weapons and tells him that to save his father, he must fight or die. Meanwhile, Butcher sneaks into Firecracker's event, using a fire extinguisher to knock out a bouncer. Suddenly feeling dizzy, he turned to Marvin and said, "If I can't do it, take Ryan away from Homelander and raise him." Marvin was surprised to see his friend change his ways and now praises him as the best father in the world. Their conversation had to be paused when the Butcher saw Firecrackers. He called, and she immediately recognized the people who murdered her friend. The Firecracker was about to attack, but the Butcher told her to calm down, keep her hair neat, and continue filming. While teasing, he took out his phone, which contained a video of Firecrackers a few years ago when she had a crush on a 15-year-old boy. Butcher threatens the Firecracker to tell him Sage's entire plan. Otherwise, he'll send it to media outlets across the country. Who would have thought that the Firecracker would personally press send and then turn around and leave? She returned to the stage to show off her acting talent, first apologizing to the public and confessing her sins, then praising God for sending that boy to help her see the right path. The big scandal was suddenly legalized. Firecracker continues to criticize Annie. She recounted the first day Annie saved someone at the age of 13 and accidentally blinded the mother of 3. At that time, Annie did not care about the victim at all, but just stared at the camera with a complacent smile. Annie, who was watching on the screen, immediately became agitated. She tries to explain that year she was unable to control her powers. The room fell silent. Annie walked out with tears in her eyes. Butcher opened the door, walked in, threw the Firecracker's car keys to Frenchie, and told him to go see. Still no need to worry about the chance of overturning the bet. At this time, A-Train broke into Homelander's room. He opened the wooden case but couldn't find what he needed. Continuing to search, A-Train found dozens of bottles of fresh milk in the drawer. This proves how much Homelander craves his mother's love. Compound V was also missing some tubes, but A-Train didn't care. He picked up a tube and was about to escape when Ashley appeared. She sneaked in here just to shit without flushing to vent her anger over losing Grace. A-Train came to see. Knowing that, he immediately made an agreement that was beneficial to both parties. Back in the laboratory, on the wall are the words, "Homelander 16 years old," proving that John has been imprisoned in this hell all his childhood. Homelander calls Marty closer and apologizes for being a bit angry. His voice was so cold that it made anyone sweat. Homelander recalls the time Marty caught him masturbating. He laughed in John's face. After that, John forced Marty to drop his pants and masturbate, and at the same time called on everyone to come watch and laugh at him together. No one dared to disobey orders and leave their position. Marty tries to apologize to John again, but he still asks Marty to drop his pants. Homelander sat on the chair with an inhuman smile. Seeing that Marty was too scared to stand, he threatened to shoot him if he couldn't do it. His life is truly in his hands. Marty was so scared that he had to spit on his hand to lubricate it. Homelander just sat there laughing happily. As soon as Marty stopped, Homelander immediately shot a laser beam that destroyed the bird's nest. Barbaba arrives and asks John to stop, to end his suffering. Homelander walked closer and put his foot on Marty's head. The sound of a skull breaking caused an employee to vomit on the spot. Barbaba asked to speak privately. Homelander agreed, but did not go into the office, but into the cell. Back in Hughie's group, in the hallway, Kimiko is shot through the stomach by someone she knew in the past. Hughie is forced to fight with a paper cutter. Based on what Kimiko had taught him before, he tried to cope. Even though he was injured, he was eventually able to slit his enemy's throat. Thanks to her ability, Kimiko quickly recovered and took control of the situation. She raised her hand to reconnect with her old love, but the other girl's eyes were filled with hatred because that day, it was Kimiko who brought her to the camp for a duel. The scar on her face was also caused by Kimiko. Kimiko stood stunned, almost crying, without saying another word, as she gently led Hughie away from the scene. On the other side, Firecracker successfully provoked Annie. Unable to contain her anger, Annie punched Firecracker in the mouth. Despite the cameras recording everything, Annie kept on top of her opponent, delivering blow after blow. Sage, observing everything from her private room, saw that everything was going according to her plan. As Annie unleashes her powers, Marvin arrives just in time to stop her. Annie calmed down and left the scene with Marvin. Nearby, Butcher was struggling with a man who had eaten the rubber fruit, his outstretched arm around Butcher's neck, choking him. Memories of his ex-wife prompted Butcher to stand up. Something ran under the skin of Butcher's face, and with a loud scream, he stood up, covered in blood, while his opponent was blown to pieces. No one understood what was going on, but the immediate priority was to get out of there as soon as possible. In the lab, Barbara criticizes John for his childish revenge. Everyone here must follow orders. None of them were happy about it. John was feared from birth, having ripped open his mother's stomach with his laser eye while still attached to the umbilical cord, killing a nurse and 2 doctors. Barbara plays on John's weakness, pointing out that they have no power to stop him from leaving, yet he chooses to stay out of fear of their disappointment and longing for their love. After the battle, Frenchie is taken care of by Colin, who this time firmly pushes him away and demands to no longer be treated kindly. When Colin asked why, Frenchie took off his shoes, revealing scars that Colin immediately recognized as the scars from the murderer of his parents and sister. Enraged, Colin attacks Frenchie, trying to strangle him in revenge. Frenchie did not resist but urged Colin to end his suffering. Colin suddenly let go, warned Frenchie to stay away, and then left. At the tower, Sage called Deep for a private meeting, offering him food as an apology for her harsh words earlier. Sage explains that her brain is constantly regenerating. Stabbing her in the heart will kill her, but stabbing her in the brain will cause it to grow back. She gave Deep a long stick and asked him to stab her through the corner of her eye. Although hesitant, Deep finally complied, and when the stick could go no further, Sage told him to use the hammer. After 2 deep blows, she asked him to put down the hammer and gently cut out her brain. She felt intense excitement, transformed into another person, ready to repay Deep by giving him sexual favors. After all these events, Annie is clearly devastated, haunted by painful memories. The president called to criticize her actions, saying that the votes they had won were now lost and that he no longer wanted an alliance with Starlight. That night, Huey goes to get Compound V from A-Train. Somehow, Butcher had found out and was waiting for him, objecting to Huey's plan to inject the compound into his father. Butcher reveals that he secretly used it in hopes of curing his cancer, but it only brought him closer to death, worsening his condition without granting him powers. However, Huey quietly put Compound 5 in his bag and went to the hospital. After many internal conflicts, he decided not to use it. His mother's sudden appearance startled him. When she sat down next to him, he awkwardly stood up and went out. Trying to suppress his grief, he brought them 2 cups of coffee. At that moment, a blue liquid flowed into his father, causing him to suddenly open his eyes, making Huey extremely scared and confused. Back at the lab, Homelander has slaughtered everyone except Barbara. Entering the elevator, he smiled with satisfaction. However, when he returned, Homelander was still haunted by what he had done. Sage stands by and asks him questions, but Homelander looks like a ghost. Back at the hospital, Huey was both relieved and worried to see his father awake. He asked some questions to check if his father was unusual, but there were no signs of anything unusual. His mind was very clear, and he remembered everything before the stroke. Huey told his father to rest and pulled his mother aside. It turned out that she took her son's Compound V to inject her husband. At headquarters, Annie is truly in crisis. News of her abortion spread like wildfire across all press agencies. Marvin gets in trouble with his daughter because she says Homelander is not a hero. One of her friends heard this and tried to confront her, but she punched him in the face. Marvin tried to explain that violence was not the answer, but she insisted that her father always used his fists. While everything is chaotic, Joe meets Butcher. He advises Butcher to work with him to take down Homelander. Joe believes that Butcher's team was not up to the task, or more accurately, they were too good. On the other hand, he and Butcher are not on good terms at all. Butcher was somewhat convinced and returned to headquarters, where the atmosphere was gloomy. Marvin immediately asks Butcher how he took down the clone, and Butcher honestly says he doesn't know. He passed out, and when he woke up, the clone had exploded. That problem aside, Butcher announces good news. He has found a way to destroy Homelander, a virus that can kill superheroes. However, Butcher did not get the virus because Newman got it first. Butcher's plan is to take it back from her. Marvin agreed, saying something so dangerous should not be in Newman's hands. They seek amnesty for a man named Stanny in exchange for his help in retrieving the virus from Newman. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Huey was happily listening to his parents reminisce about old memories. Suddenly, his mother gave him a necklace with her engagement ring and urged him to marry Annie. After she left the room, Huey asked his father about the power of attorney, and his father recounted a story about a sick cat many years ago. Huey doesn't want his father to free the cat prematurely, and it eventually inflates and bursts like a balloon. His father did not want him to suffer the same fate. While explaining, his father stopped and asked Huey's mother where he had gone, which made Huey feel like something was wrong. Butcher's team is led by Stanny to a house in the suburbs. He emphasized that if Newman wanted to hide something, it would be there. They carefully moved inside, seeing blood everywhere. Butcher noticed a rabbit. He took the syringe from its body and released it outside, showing that this place used to be a virus research laboratory. Suddenly, the group started to have nosebleeds. Newman enters with her team, angrily scolding Stanny for leading her enemies to this place. Stanny calmly explains the situation and convinces Newman to cooperate with the boys. Meanwhile, the Seven held a press conference to launch the training film for A-Train, setting the stage for Ryan's film. Everything was ready, but Ryan said he didn't want to film. This time, Homelander did not scold him, but supported his son, happy to see Ryan expressing his opinion. Homelander realizes he has been manipulated all his life and has done the same thing to his son, so he vows to change, eliminating all rules between them. Newman led her father and the boys to a farm. Inside, they found a dead body. It turned out that these chickens had been injected with compound Vive, giving them the ability to penetrate the human body as easily as eating grain, even without being penetrated by bullets. A chicken attacked Stanley, but Newman used his powers to make it explode. The group quickly ran out and closed the door. Butcher angrily scolds Newman, causing her to retaliate by exposing his plan to steal his files in exchange for Ryan. Butcher denies it, but the group looks at him with judgmental eyes. Marvin suggests putting this matter aside to focus on finding Samir, the lab manager, to find out what happened. On the way, Butcher noticed the rabbit he had released earlier, now lying dying. Suddenly, something burst out of its stomach. Butcher angrily stomped on it. Back at the hospital, Huey couldn't find his father, so he and his mother rushed to find him. They were shocked to see his father holding the doctor's heart in his hand, completely deranged and not recognizing his own son. Compound V took effect, turning him into a superhero who could phase through objects but would become stuck if stopped. Huey caught up with his father in the hallway, but his father's mind was still fuzzy, thinking that Huey was only 11 years old. Seeing his wife, he became angry, attacked a running security guard, using him as a place to vent his anger. After killing the guard, he continued to chase Daphne, blaming her for abandoning him and their son. Sensing danger, Huey walked up to his mother and recounted old memories, calming his father. At the farm, the animals injected with compound Vive became mad, rushing out and chasing people. Suddenly, an animal vomited blue liquid and fell dead. Other animals quickly followed suit, falling one after another as the virus took effect. Newman panicked and couldn't find Samir. In the end, the group left empty-handed without the virus, and Stanley was sent back to prison. The car carrying him had only traveled a short distance when the driver exploded. Newman blocked his father's escape route. Homelander summons all members, declaring that America is in decline and that it is time to take drastic action to save the country. They will no longer be heroes, but gods of wrath. In the room, there are two new generation heroes, Sam and Kate. They were ordered to vent their anger on the MC, who was falsely accused of treason. In reality, he was innocent because Ashley took his phone and sent a text message to Marvin. Meanwhile, Huey is injecting some kind of drug into his father, determined to help him die peacefully, rather than continue losing control and killing innocent people. Butcher drives Joe back to the farm, revealing that he had previously captured Samir. Their goal is for Samir to continue his research into creating a virus capable of killing superheroes. These are the events in the first 5 episodes of The Boys Season 4. Don't forget to subscribe and press the notification bell so you don't miss the next episodes. Goodbye, and see you next time.